Hello everyone, my name is Wofil and welcome to the 13th episode of Strats Explained, Magically Easy, a video series where I explain how and why different strats and glitches that speedrunners use work. Today we are going to talk about the invincibility glitch. You're not going to take any damage from bullets, fire, explosions, falls, water and even mega jumps in GTA 3. There is, however, at least one way to die. That's gonna happen if you will be sitting in a vehicle that explodes. A good thing about this glitch is it works in every 3D era GTA apart from San Andreas. To perform this glitch you have to force an officer to do the fast arrest animation. This is when he pulls out his pistol and aims at you while you're getting in a car. And that car must explode before you fully get in. It is certainly easier just to see once. I suggest to keep the door closed. This way the animation is gonna be longer and it will be easier to time. To force an officer to do the fast arrest animation, it is enough to just bump into him. But for the trick to work he must be close to the door. An important note, before getting into any vehicle you must go far away from the officer, so he disappears. Otherwise he will finish his job and arrest you, even though he's dead. In GTA Liberty City stories, sometimes it's easier to punch the officer before getting in. The rest is exactly the same. In GTA Vice City stories and, well, San Andreas, things are a bit different, so we're gonna talk about them later. The worst thing about this glitch is that cutscenes, and most missions have them, reset it. Finishing a mission also resets it. As you can see, it is much less useful now, but there are still some speedrunning categories where it is used to its full power. Namely, all hidden packages and all rampages in GTA 3. In these categories you don't have to do any missions, not even the first one. And moving using mega jumps is extremely fast, especially on flat surfaces, you save a lot of time. Let's see how it all works. There are obviously multiple ways of finding relevant parts of code. My first thought was, okay, maybe I should search for the word arrest. It's safe to assume it's gonna be used somewhere, right? But let me show you another method. In the top right corner we have a button called Solution Explorer. When I press it we see all of the directories and files of this project, and we find a folder called pads. Inside there are some files that are responsible for cops, coppad.cpp and coppad.h. Let's open the header file, so .h. And look, we find the function that is called setArrestPlayer. This is the one that we are looking for, and obviously we would find it using the search bar as I mentioned previously. Let's see what's inside. Inside we have a condition. If our player is entering a car, then the game takes our player and says, can be damaged? False. So we no longer can take any damage, and this is how we become invincible. Simple as that. This function also saves the cop that is arresting us. And it sets a very weird flag, gonna kill the carjacker, to true. Why is it weird? Well, the carjacker. We don't really have to jack any cars, we can use our own vehicle, so that already doesn't make much sense here. Let me show you the proper usage of that flag. It's right here. Look, when somebody wants to steal a vehicle, if that somebody is not the actual driver of that vehicle, and if he is not stealing it from the left door, so he has to steal it from the passenger's door, if the driver is not a player, so this is not our car, and if the driver's temper is more than his fear, then he's gonna say, okay, I'm gonna kill the carjacker. Otherwise, he's just gonna run away. So usually it's like that. When we try to steal a vehicle from the passenger's door, if the driver is brave enough, he's gonna try to fight back. Otherwise, he's gonna run away, but that doesn't matter. So once again, I'm not really sure what this flag does here, but okay, it's here, let's remember that for now. Later we see another branch. If we are not getting in the car, then we still are becoming invincible. But right before that, we are getting arrested, so we don't have any time to do anything. Let's see where else this setPadState function is used with pad arrested. For that I'm gonna use the search, and look, there are not so many results, we're interested in the last one. If we go here we end up in pad_anim_getIn_cb or callback. This function is called when a pedestrian fully gets in a vehicle. And right here, check this out. If that pedestrian is player, and that weird flag is set to true, and we remember it is set to true, and the cop exists, then we are getting arrested. So this is why, if we run away from the cop and he despawns, this condition turns false and we no longer get arrested. That also tells us that the fact that the cop dies or the fact that the vehicle explodes, these facts, they don't matter. The only thing that matters is that we somehow interrupt and stop the getting in animation. So, are there any other ways? I would assume so. I can imagine a situation when we try to get in a car and some angry driver hits our car so hard so we fall on the ground and stay invincible. Obviously, I cannot really check that in-game because, well, that's like 1 in a million chance of this happening. But I can assume it's possible, and I believe it will make us invincible, and I believe there are other ways too. Blowing up the vehicle is just the easiest and the most convenient way known so far, but it doesn't mean there are no other ways. How can we fix this glitch? Well, it's very easy. All we have to do is remove this line. So even if we somehow interrupt the getting in animation, we won't become invincible. And that's basically it. You know what, I actually found a way to model the situation I mentioned using Cheat Engine. And I was right, you don't have to kill the cop, you don't have to blow up the vehicle, you just have to cancel the getting in animation. Although you also have to knock down the officer. Otherwise, he is going to arrest you even if you're far away from him, or even if you didn't fall on the ground, he's still gonna do it. Anyway, this theory is confirmed, as that means that there might be even more invincibility setups. Let's look at the conditions for the fast arrest animation. To do so, we're going to put a little red dot, a breakpoint, in front of a line we know that is going to be executed for sure. The one that makes us invincible is a good candidate. Now, after we launch the program, and literally before it tries to execute this line, it's going to stop automatically. I already did all of that. Now we want to pay attention to this little window at the bottom. It is called call stack. It shows us a chain of function calls that led us to executing this line. At the very top we have ccop_pet set arrest player, and that's logical, we are literally in this function. Now we can see where it was called from. To do so, we pay attention to the next line, ccop_pet process control. We can literally double click it and boom, there it is, the set arrest player function call that we were looking for. As you can see, it's surrounded by a lot of conditions, and remember, all of these conditions are checked on an officer that tries to arrest us, unless stated otherwise. Let's see what's there. First we check officer's pet state. It must be equal to pet seek entity. Not really sure why, but let's believe it's true. Then, if the seek target doesn't exist, then the cop is going to restore his previous state. But we know, cop's target is our player, and it exists, so we actually end up in this branch instead. Here, we take target's position and don't do anything with it for now. Then we call something called seek. If this seek function returns true, we end up here. For now, let's believe it's true. Now we check cop's objective. If it is kill char on foot, and we know that when we have wanted level, cops are trying to kill us, and if the distance to target is less than 2.5, and yeah, we remember that he has to be close to us, and if the player exists, well, we know we exist, then we end up in this set of conditions, and these are checked on the player. If player's state is pet arrested, or player's state is pet enter car, or if player's state is pet carjack and the distance to target is less than 1.3, then the game arrests us. Okay, most of these conditions make sense, apart from two, pet seek entity and this seek function. Let's first look at this seek function. It's quite big. Let me scroll and you'll see there is a lot of going on. But what we need to understand is, if we reach the very bottom, it's going to return true. And the only way we don't reach the bottom is if we hit this return false. There is only one place where we can return earlier than the very end. And let's see when that happens. Well, there is only one condition. We are going to return false if seek pos dist is more or equal to distance to count it done. What are these two variables? Let's start with seek pos dist. If we scroll a bit further up, we'll see that we take target's position, then we take cop's position, and we get a distance between these 2 points, a 2D distance. Alright, so this is basically a distance between a cop and our player. But what about the other one, distance to count done? Judging by its name, we can assume that's a threshold. So when the cop is too far away from us, then he thinks, okay, I'm still seeking for the target, seeking for the player, and the function returns false. But as soon as he gets close to us, he says, okay, I found my target, I found the player, and the function returns true. What is the value of distance to count and done though? I checked it, and during my tests it was 2.5. And let's see how it happened. We were looking for an obstacle using the function called test sphere against world. So it literally puts an imaginary sphere, the center is where the player is, the radius is 0.4, and this set of conditions says that we are looking only for cars. Remember, the second one is true, rest are false, because if I open this function, we'll see, okay, the first one, check for buildings, false, check for vehicles, true, and then pets, objects, dummies, all of these are false. So we're looking only for vehicles, and if there is a vehicle, and if it's a car, then the distance is going to be 2.5. If it's some other vehicle, like a helicopter for example, then the distance is going to be calculated using the actual model's dimensions. It's going to be a bit different from 2.5. Alright, to quickly sum it up, this seek function returns true only if an officer gets close to its target, to our player, closer than 2.5 if we're using a car, and that kind of checks out with this. Because look, here it must be less than 2.5, the distance between the cop and the target. So now the only condition we don't understand is this one, pet seek entity. RE3 has multiple debug cheats, and one of them, pet debug, allows us to see some extra information about pedestrians. As you can see, after we get wounded level, cop's objective becomes kill char on foot. Next, his state is seek entity, but as soon as he gets close, we see that he starts punching us and his state changes to fight. But we know, when a cop arrests us, his state is seek entity, so the question is how does it change back? To answer that, let's go back to the code. Select pet seek entity and press Shift plus F12 to find all references. Here we can see a function that is responsible for changing states. It's called setPetState, and in this case it is called from a function called setSeek. Once again, Shift plus F12 to find all references, and we have a few results. I know that the one we are looking for is this one. We end up in a function called processObjective. If I scroll higher up, we'll see that the objective in question is objective kill char on foot, the one that we know that the officer has. Okay, let's go back to the conditions. There were quite a few of them. We'll start with the first line. If the officer doesn't have to kinda stay in the same place, doesn't have to stop and shoot, his state is not ped attack, and our player is not in a no police zone. And as you can see, these are quite specific, and it is safe to assume that generally this whole line returns true. And we end up here. Here we have a set of conditions, 5 lines. If at least one of these lines is true, then the state is going to change to seek entity. The first one. If the distance between the cop and our player is more than weapon range, and remember, cop is using his fists, then the state changes. Or if our player's get up timer is more than current time, well, this is not it, because get up timer is only relevant if somebody fell somewhere, and we know that we didn't fall. So okay, this is surely not it. Or if our player's state is ped arrested, once again we know this is not true. Or if our player is entering a car and the distance between him and the cop is less than 3, okay, now this is interesting. Or if that distance is actually more than distance to count seek done, so some threshold value, and the officer cannot see us, then the state changes to seek entity. And now we understand that when we are far away from the officer, this condition is true, because the distance between us is definitely more than the weapon range. His hands are not long enough to reach us, so he has to seek the entity. But when we are doing the glitch, this condition becomes true. We are entering a car, and cop is close to us, less than 3 units away. Okay, I've explained the last conditions that we saw, but there is one last question. Why do we have to bump into the cop before getting in the car? Turns out that we actually end up in the setArrestPlayer function, but when I was showing it to you for the first time in the beginning, I skipped over these 2 very important lines, and they say, if the current in-game time is more than pet state timer, then we return from this function, meaning that we do not execute the line that makes us invincible. So what is this pet state timer? I don't know for sure. As far as I understood, it's used in multiple scenarios, but one thing I actually know, by default it's equal to 0, and obviously the current in-game time is more than 0 by default, so we return. And now the question is, how do we change that value? By the way, it's the timer for cop, not for our player. And to answer the previous question, well, once again, Shift plus F12 to find all of the references. This time we scroll to the very bottom and choose this one. We end up in a function that is called collide with pet. And this function is called on our player, so the pet we collide with is the cop. Once again, there are a lot of conditions, so let's make our way through them. In the first batch, we are interested in this one. If the pet that we collide with is not our player, and we know that cop is not our player, then we get inside. Next we check player's move state. If it's not pet move none, and it's not pet move still, and we know that we are moving, then we are getting in. Here we're interested in this one. If our move speed is less or equal to 1.8, and it turns out that it's actually greater than that, so we don't get inside, and instead we get here to this line of conditions. Here we check the cop's stats, and the stat we are interested in is defend weakness. If it's less or equal than 1.5, then we will get in. How can we check this stat? Well, we can look it up in a file called petstats.dat. It's located in the data folder of the game. And as we can see, for cop, the value is 1.0, so it's less than 1.5. And finally, we end up here. If the game can control the cop, and the current time is more than pet state timer, remember, it's 0 by default, then we create an animation for cop, and set that timer to current time plus 1000, so plus 1 second. In this case, we can assume that this is done, so we cannot trigger the animation more than once in a second. We give it some time to play. But for us it means that after triggering that animation by bumping into the cop, we have exactly 1 second to get in the car, trigger and satisfy all of the previous conditions that we looked at, and finally trigger the glitch. Going back to the set arrest player function for one last time and pressing Shift plus F12 to see all the references, we discover that this function is actually called from multiple places, meaning that there are more sets of conditions and potentially more obscure ways of triggering the glitch. But this is gonna stay a mystery until someone else decides to dig into it. A few words about GTA San Andreas. One of the issues is when the car is on fire, officers run away from it. But the biggest problem is, apparently the code that controls cops was completely rewritten, meaning that the glitch isn't present in the game in the first place. GTA Vice City Stories was the most troublesome out of all. The thing is, no matter what you do, the cop is going to continue punching you with his nightstick. But Painted Cat shared some interesting info. Apparently, if you force the officer to use his pistol, everything is gonna work. To do that, you need to jump on top of a car and wait until the cop starts shooting at you. However, be ready that after that he'll run away from you to keep safe distance. If that happens, get in a car and wait until he gets back to you, or simply drive towards him. I got lucky and the cop didn't run away from me, maybe he thought he was covered by the car between us. The rest is exactly the same as before. Lure him to a door, bump into him and start getting in a car that's about to explode. I must mention that this glitch also works on other platforms too. Here is the PS2 version of GTA Liberty City Stories. Here is the mobile version of GTA 3. The method is identical. And of course I can already see your question. Does it work in the definitive edition? And the answer is surprisingly no. Developers found and fixed the problem. Psych! Of course it does! Imagine if the definitive edition fixed anything. So, as we can see, the glitch is actually useful, but quite limited at the same time. Nonetheless, it is used in some speedruns, and you can use it for fun. For instance, you can reach a locked island by swimming, even if your character cannot normally swim. In my opinion, this is somewhere on the same level with Bass's pallet method of swimming. Keep in mind, this is not fast, so you have enough time to get some tea. This clip is 16 times the original speed. Hey you! Yes, you in front of the monitor. Stand up and stretch with Tommy right now. Alright, let's wrap this up. I already told you that cutscenes and finishing missions remove the effect. But can you think about any other ways? This is your challenge for today. Leave your ideas in the comments, and if they're correct, I'll give you a heart. And that's it for today. A poll for the next topic is already live. Use the link from the pinned comment and choose the option you like the most. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and if you don't want to miss the next episode, consider subscribing. My name is Wofil, see you the next time.